Bring to us your poetry from inspiration sought. Come join us with your images, your verses, words, and thought. From here we'll share your balladry with those who do not know it. This platform's here for you to show the world that you're the poet.
Welcome to episode 56 of You're the Poet, the poetry podcast featuring you. I'm host Matt Burgio, and I'm here with co-host Phil Burgio. Phil, welcome.
Like being here.
Here at You're the Poet, our purpose is to share our love of poetry with the world and invite you to do the same. We want to start by saying thank you to all of our listeners who have made You're the Poet possible. We hope you enjoy the podcast and the poetry that is shared here. If you've written any poetry and you want to share it here, whether you just have an interest in poetry, consider yourself an amateur poet, or are a professional poet with published works, contact us to be a guest on a future episode. Our featured guest for this episode of You're the Poet is Paul Robert Bender, known as William Henry Magus, who is joining us from Hespeler, Ontario. Paul, welcome to You're the Poet.
Good day.
We're glad that you can join us, and we look forward to your contribution to the episode. To start things off, I'm going to share a classic poem for the episode. This poem will be by A. Milne, or Alan Alexander Milne. He's an English novelist and playwright and poet. He was born in London in 1882 and died in Sussex, England in 1956. He actually has a degree from Trinity College, Cambridge in mathematics, but he always had a love for writing, and he wrote for the school student magazine called Granta, and later his works appeared in Punch, which was a British humor magazine, where he contributed and later became an assistant editor as well. I thought it was interesting that he served in both world wars. In World War I, he served as an officer and rose to the rank of lieutenant. And in World War II, he served in the Home Guard, which was a volunteer citizens militia, and he led a platoon there. Most people are familiar with A. Milne and his creation of Winnie the Pooh, beloved children's story I'm sure everybody is familiar with. He wrote 2 Winnie the Pooh books, and unfortunately for him, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, Winnie the Pooh kind of overshadowed everything else that he did. He was a prolific playwright. He wrote many plays both before and after his Winnie the Pooh books, and also wrote a couple collections of poetry, most notably his collections of children's poems. And because that overshadowed what he did, he wanted to break away from the children's writing. And he said, his son, Christopher Robin, was growing up, and he just sort of moved away from that and kind of got more serious back into his writing of plays and wrote some novels, etc. But Winnie the Pooh is definitely what he's most known for. And the poem that I'm sharing today is called Vespers. This predates Winnie the Pooh. This is from his collection called When We Were Young, which was first published in 1924. And the illustrations there were by E.H. Shepard, who did a lot of illustrations of Milne's work and where we get some of the early drawings of Winnie the Pooh. But like I said, this predates Winnie the Pooh and does, though, include Christopher Robin. So, of course, Christopher Robin was his son, and a lot of the stories and poems and things he wrote were inspired by Christopher Robin and his toys and his friends. This poem is about Christopher Robin saying his prayers. And I found it humorous because even in my prayers, I find that it's easy to get distracted. And so there's a little humor in this as the boy gets distracted saying his prayers. So this is Vespers. Little boy kneels at the foot of the bed, droops on the little hands, little golden head. Hush, hush, whisper, who dares? Christopher Robin is saying his prayers. God bless Mummy, I know that's right. Wasn't it fun in the bath tonight? The cold so cold and the hot so hot. Oh, God bless Daddy, I quite forgot. If I open my fingers a little bit more, I can see Nanny's dressing gown on the door. It's a beautiful blue, but it hasn't a hood. Oh, and God bless Nanny and make her good. Mine has a hood and I lie in bed, and I pull the hood right over my head, and I shut my eyes and I curl up small, and nobody knows that I'm there at all. Oh, thank you, God, for a lovely day. And what was the other I had to say? I said bless Daddy, so what can it be? Oh, now I remember it. God bless me. Little boy kneels at the foot of the bed, droops on the little hands, little golden head. Hush, hush, whisper who dares. Christopher Robin is saying his prayers. A. Milne.
I like that. I can imagine you and your brothers saying your prayers and getting distracted like that.
Oh, yeah. And it was interesting hearing Christopher Robin's take on it. He said this was the poem that caused him the most grief or angst growing up because some of these poems were put to music. And so when he was in school, the kids would tease him and play the recordings of the song about him saying his prayers. And so he got bullied a lot because of some of these poems and some of the works and some of the popularity of his father. So I thought it was interesting, but I thought that was neat that this predated Winnie the Pooh, even though we're all familiar with Christopher Robin.
It's funny you mentioned Winnie the Pooh because I'm from Ontario, Canada. And one time my wife and I took a trip all over Ontario to north of Lake Superior. We stopped at his childhood home where I think he wrote Winnie the Pooh. And it was interesting to go to that area. There's a museum there where he was from.
Okay.
The writer. What's his name? The writer?
A.A. Milne. And I'm sure he's from England. I didn't know he lived in Canada. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, possibly he was from Canada too.
Okay.
Or was in Canada for a while. Keep in mind, it could be wrong, but I'm positive he was in Canada for a while.
Well, like we've done in other episodes, we'll look that up and we'll update the listeners in a future episode. But I'll definitely check that out. But that's interesting. You said there was a museum up there of it?
Yeah, White River, Ontario.
Okay, neat. All right, well, from here, I'm going to turn it over to Phil to share his poem for the episode.
Okay, this poem is called Blossoms in November. True story. This happened last year. Blossoms in November from a dormant tree, caused by a warmer autumn, a wondrous sight to see. Standing against the branches, the white flowers shine so bright, contrasts against the gray tree bark, glowing with angelic light. Some would say that the cause is a sign of climate shift, but in my heart, I know the root. It's just a miraculous gift. Philip Burgio.
All right, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I like this poem, and I don't know what gave you the inspiration, but I know when I hear this, I picture our pear tree out front.
Well, it was the pear tree, and I took a photograph of it, too.
Oh, neat.
Well, Philip, when I read this earlier, it brought a little tear to my eye. And it was just for what humans have done to this planet.
I like when my poetry inspires people like that, emotions.
Isn't that what we're striving to do? To make people think?
Right.
I think that's definitely one of our missions, if you will, as poets. All right, from here, I'm going to share actually two just short poems for the episode. These are both a short haiku that I wrote that had to do with the fall season. First one is called Acorns. Plop on the tin roof, the tears of the great oak fall as its leaves turn red. Matthew Burgio. And then my second one is called Autumn Scene. Colored leaves fall fast, dancing in the autumn breeze, yellow, brown, and red. Matthew Burgio.
Good. I like haikus. Haikus are fun. I'm surprised that some people says that they have a hard time writing a haiku, and I don't understand why. Paul, you write haiku at all?
No, I was about to say I'm amazed at people that can write haikus. I'm a member of a group in the city. I have a poets group, a writers group, and I hear some of the stuff they're working on. I would just feel so constricted to write a haiku or something because I guess it's a free verse I write. Yeah, it's free verse I write in. I just write my emotions down all the time and my thoughts and imagery. That's all I think about is imagery.
I like haikus and I like poetry with structure rhyming. I consider like a puzzle. Somebody might sit there doing a crossword puzzle. I'll sit there and work out a haiku. Just give my brain something to do.
Oh, don't misunderstand me here. I have higher admiration.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, you just don't.
It's not my cup of tea.
That's not your style.
Yeah, one of the things we love about the podcast is the variety that we get. All the poets, that's the whole concept of You're the Poet. Everybody's got their own voice, their own style, and their own way of expressing the things they want to say. So it's one of the things we love about this.
Right. There's so many different styles of poetry that it doesn't get boring. Poetry never gets boring to me. You can always listen to somebody else's style or one of the classic styles or some of the ancient writings.
When I was younger in school, I hated poetry. I couldn't stand poetry. It was partially the way it was taught and what was taught. But as I got older, I realized what poetry was. And I met a few poets and I heard them and went to see them and read what they were writing. And I realized that poetry could be so much more. One, I realized that poetry was music.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that poetry and music were one and the same, it changed everything for me. But one of the poets I met with Al Purdy. Al Purdy changed my life. And another was Patrick Friesen in Canada, who was another great Canadian poet. Both of them were very instrumental in inspiring me to be more than I possibly could be. And when I met them, I was a shining moment in my life. My girlfriend at the time took me to meet them, and I was gobsmacked.
It's good to hear what other poets that people have met.
Most people never get to meet their heroes, ever. And those two men were my heroes. And I still remember taking a picture with Al and his wife, Earthy, I think was there. It was just before he passed.
Hmm.
later on, my wife and I went we just went for a weekend up to an area called Quinty's Isle in Ontario. And that's actually where Al was from. And we were just walking around one day at this park, and we came across this lovely little park, and we were just kind of exploring. And there was a graveyard. And in the graveyard was this gravestone, which was a huge book. So we went up to see what it was, and it was Al's grave.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
So we stood there in just in awe, thinking, a few years ago we had met him, and he brought us together as a couple over poetry. And now we're standing beside his grave, and we're thinking about him. And it was a very cathartic moment for us.
Could imagine. Yeah.
But it was also very eerie.
Yeah, I imagine.
And it kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Right, for someone you've met and you talked to, and all of a sudden you just randomly stumble upon their grave, huh?
And he's right there in front of me at my feet. And I'm thinking, this man, now he's in the ground. Now he was an elderly man when I met him.
Right.
Like he was in his late 70s, early 80s, but it doesn't matter. He was influential.
Right.
And I was gobsmacked listening to him.
That's wonderful.
As Americans, you guys maybe have never heard of him, but I would suggest you take a look at him. Alfred Purdy.
Purdy. P-U-R-D-Y?
P-U-R-D-Y.
We'll have to look that up for sure.
And,
Bill's jotting it down now. Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to have my hero sit next to me every week when I'm doing these podcasts.
Oh, that is so smooth, buddy. That's so great.
I thought it was John Williams.
Yeah, maybe in the music world.
My daddy's not here, so I can't do that. But Dad, if you listen to this later, you're my hero too.
There you go.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have the influence, like you said, to hear other poets, because it gives us a chance to look them up and to hear what they're doing and what their styles were like. We have people talk about their poetic heroes all the time and the people that influence them. So
Robert Frost for me.
Yeah.
Frost, wow.
On one of our podcasts, on our classic poem, I found a YouTuber, Robert Frost, reading his own poem. So on the podcast, I got to say, Robert, you're the poet. Show us what you got. So we started a Robert Frost recording.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. When you talked about not liking poetry in school, I remember a conversation we had way back in episode 3 with Marge Robinson. And she talked about that when she was in school and you were learning about the poets like William Wordsworth and some of these older, what to a lot of young kids seems like archaic. And she just talked about how, a lot of what they were talking about were things that she didn't relate to. Or even I remember Mary Coley talking about some of the language in some of those older poems, like not understanding some of the words and the style that they were writing made it hard to understand in today's context. So I think that's probably true for a lot of kids.
Well, that was a problem for me. It was the language. It was too much about the techniques behind it and not about what it was.
Right.
If we sat there talking about what this did to me, that would have been a whole different thing. How did this make you feel?
We had talked about, especially for me, I would rather listen to the poet recite his poems than to read it.
Exactly.
Because when you read it, you can't get his emotions or her emotions. You're just reading the words and you just different feeling. So I'd rather listen to the poet recite his poems.
There's nothing better than going to hear a poet recite his poems. And I remember going to see Al recite some of his poems at a place called Eden Mills in Ontario. And the book he signed for me, I have it in the notes. I can't remember which one it was now, but I wrote in the poem it was that he read in the Meadow at Eden Mills. And that is something that stays in my heart 30 years later.
That's awesome. All right. Well, from here, we're going to turn to our guest portion of the episode. Paul, you're the poet. Show us what you've got.
Show you what I got? Good Lord.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've selected 3 poems that you had asked me to select. But the first one I'm going to read today is one that I wrote while I was in the hospital recovering from a very serious health issue. And I was just sitting there looking out the window, staring at this Speed River in Cambridge, Ontario, wondering what the hell I was going to do with myself. And I'm just going to read this. With dreams of treason, the sky made love with monstrous streams, and rancid thoughts combined to create this scene. The river. A window estranged, but not deranged. A man staring out to sea, the remnants of a summer hiding in the river's edge, as otters play on borrowed time before the arrival of the solid water, rising over broken horizons through partial sun and autumn flowers of yellow and red, a bridge carrying serpents over meandering waters. A city sleeps while the river escapes. The otters play while the river drifts away. There are new starts, new beginnings, with no endings. Architectural rises towering over the ancient lines. The river cuts a seam and delivers life, passing summer, winter, spring, and autumn. Everything is moving towards the long, cold sleep and slumber. The birds have left the northern skies, while rodents prepare for solid water, and the city begins to sleep to the sounds of the steaming monster crawling down the iron trail. The river tells this ancient story when colorful warriors lined her shore, and decorated heroes silently paddled by on wooden boats with ancient tales of beaver pelts, fermented barrels, a future of profound shame. The river knows his story and whispers the weeping years. The river shares her tale and slices a scar through the waking city as early morning patrons bow to a newborn day. Hurried travelers reaching towards the future and the river's forgotten past of a life left behind. Paul Robert Bender. Thank you.
All right, thank you for sharing. I love all the imagery and all the different scenes that you see along the river or in the river.
Yeah, even the history part of the river. What river is that?
That would be the Speed River in Cambridge, Ontario.
Speed River.
The Speed River. It joins into the Grand River, which is a major river through Ontario, which flows into Lake Erie, I believe.
Okay.
All those rivers are used by the Native Americans for transportation.
Right.
I could just see sitting out that window, those canoes paddling up and down the river, and I was there. I could feel it. I could hear the sounds of those paddles hitting the water, the splashes.
We have two rivers by us, the Little Miami, which is the smaller one that flows into the Ohio, which has a whole lot of history.
I'm familiar with that river too.
Yeah, I think rivers are great in general for poetry because there's a lot of imagery, there's a lot of history, there's a lot that happens on our rivers. If you think of our society and our culture and civilization, we always have our buildings and stuff around water. I mean, water's the source of life. You know, whether it's shipping and trade, you know, the rivers and the lakes all became very important centers of commerce and of life. And so there's a lot there with the history and with the happenings of the river.
Well, I live on the Speed River in Cambridge, Ontario. And that's why I bought this house, was because of the river, because I wanted to be on water. Every morning I wake up and I look out onto the river and just be thankful I'm here and can see the water flowing by me.
Do you kayak or canoe?
I'm a canoeist, avid canoeist. That's why I bought the house in the river.
That's awesome. I do a lot of kayaking.
Oh, you sinful person, you.
Well, you know, I had a canoe.
It's a joke.
You have a canoe.
I have a canoe, but you know, 17-foot aluminum canoe.
Oh,
And it required more than one person to operate. And so when it got harder to get people to go with me, I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy a kayak so I can just go. So it's one of my bucket list items to kayak in every state here in the United States. I've got one left. I got to make it to Alaska.
well, that would be fabulous.
But I've kayaked every other state.
And then you can go to Ontario.
I've already kayaked in Ontario.
Okay.
Where are you thinking about going in Ontario?
Well, I was on the St. Lawrence, actually.
Okay.
There's a mix of the Thousand Islands there.
Yeah.
I've got a friend whose family owns one of the islands there, Axman Island, I believe it's called. So when I went to visit him, he had some kayaks and we did some kayaking on the St. Lawrence there.
See, my wife and I spent 2 or 3 weeks every summer on a canoe trip somewhere, from northern to northwestern Ontario. My oasis to get away from life and just recharge my batteries.
When I was a kid, I canoed on the French and Pickerel rivers up there.
Okay.
And it was far enough long ago where we didn't bring water. We just dipped our cup into the river. That's how clean it was.
So what I do just still to this day.
Wow.
Great trip.
I hope that never changes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love being on the water. My wife, too, she's an avid water lover. Anytime we go on a trip and we can get on a boat on the water, she's usually all about that. We usually plan a boat trip. And like I said, I love kayaking and do it a little less now that I'm married, just because of time and doing other things. But I've kayaked all over the country here and still hoping to expand on that.
Well, my wife says she married me because of the canoe.
There you go.
Nice. My current wife, she did kayak with me a few times before we were married, even before we were dating. That was one of the draws that she liked, that I did stuff like that.
Okay, Paul, you got another one for us.
I do so. This one is called Tea with a Schizophrenic. This was written at the same time at the hospital, and I was just watching this poor young woman who was much younger than me, who was suffering from schizophrenic, and it broke my heart watching her. And I wanted to reach into her and heal her, make her better. And the power was not within me, but I sat there watching her every day and listening to her. I just could do nothing about it. So I picked up my pen, did what I always do, and I started writing, and I wrote this poem for her. Tea with a Schizophrenic. A haunting tale. Misfortune. Confusion. She's confused in her confusion. Moments incongruent as she speaks. Something's missing. You can see it in her eyes. Her confusion is her pain. She is unaware as she speaks. She can't see how something's wrong. Would I, if I were she? She tells a story, weaves her tapestry, a delusional dream. Such boredom. The redhead spouse. Paul Robert Bender. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That line, confused in her confusion, that's pretty strong.
She was very young, I would say in her 20s, and it literally broke my heart to watch her vacillating back and forth in her thoughts. And he couldn't get through to her. And I kept saying to her, it's not real, it's not real, it's not real. And I'm not a professional in any sense of the word. I just wanted to make her better. And I couldn't do that.
Right.
And I went to my own room and just wanted to cry. And my wife and I had a name for her, and I don't want to say it because I don't want anybody to know who she was, but the name was an affection name for her. And I still think of her to this day, and it's 20 years ago. And I think of her almost like she would have been my daughter. Like I'd be caring for her like that way because I had that kind of affection towards her and kind of draw towards her. And I see people that way. I'm drawn to people that way.
Well, mental illnesses can be scary, and I imagine schizophrenia is one of the most dramatic of them. I mean, because like you said, that confusion, a lot of times they don't know what's going on. And now it sounded like, from her perspective, that it wasn't scary for her, that she was more oblivious to what was going on. Is that the case there? Or?
I don't really know, and I don't want to overstate my knowledge, but she didn't seem to know, and I kept trying to tell her, it's not real, it's not real, it's not real. But it doesn't matter because in her mind, it is real.
Right.
And me saying that over and over, it doesn't make any difference in the world. But I just want to console her and tell her it's okay. It's not real. It's okay. Please. But she was so frightened and so scared and thought so many things were trying to hurt her.
Have you done any follow-up to find out?
As a man, I want to be very careful about that because she was a lot younger than me.
Yeah, I understand that.
I've often found, especially on Facebook, a lot of young women write to me, and I have to be very careful because they start to overthink what I'm saying to them.
Right.
And I don't want to create problems that way.
Mm-hmm.
And with this young lady, I wouldn't want to do that either because the only thing I'd be offering her is friendship. And I can be awfully flirty when I talk to people. And that's not something I do intentionally. It's just because the way I speak and the way I talk and the way I act. But I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But I thought of her a lot.
Well, I think it's great that you sort of immortalized her here in the poem and gave her some thought and some of that affection.
Well, you know what? I read her this poem when I was in the hospital with her.
Okay.
I read it to everybody who was out in the hospital, the nursing staff, to the patients, to everybody, because I wanted everybody to know that this is another human being with thoughts and feelings just like all of us. She just has problems expressing it like we all do.
Definitely.
We just have to see them differently. I just hope that people, when they see someone like that, they think differently of it. And I hope maybe if I can inspire someone to think differently, that would make me feel great. Because that's my only intent.
Yeah, I think sometimes for us, it's hard to see people where they are, that you got to think about where they are and meet them there and not be judgmental in those observations. So it's a good note to have out there for people. Well, before we move on to the final poem, tell us a little bit about your poetic journey and how you got started and just about your writing in general.
Well, I don't know if I want to say this or not, but I was in music for a long time. And I was a sound engineer or a sound mixer, whatever you want to call it. And I worked with a lot of young musicians. And I tried to do some producing. And a lot of times I found I was helping them write lyrics to songs. I didn't know I was doing it. I was just throwing out ideas constantly. And I had no idea what it was. But I had such a dreadful performance in school. And life went on and I played around with writing, but I didn't really do anything with it. But later on in my life, I met a woman who, and her and I became great friends. And she encouraged me to write. And I started reading stuff like Jim Morrison, which I thought was so fantastic when I first read it. Looking back now, I just think it's dreadful. But at the time, I thought it was great. But then I started reading other poets. And this woman took me to see all these different shows to meet different poets. And I met a couple. And I met both my living heroes, which was fantastic. And I met one of them named Patrick Friesen. And I told him I wanted to be a poet. And he said to me, don't quit your day job.
Yeah.
And I kind of dropped to my knees and wept. But he's absolutely correct. Because you can't make a living being just a poet. You got to do something else. It's something you do as a side gig.
Correct.
But I kept writing every day in my little book. I just kept doing it because, not to make money, just because I do it to breathe. I do it to get up every day to remind myself, look at the sunshine. It's another day. It's another whatever it is. You just keep going. There's a reason for life. There's a reason for everything, the beauty in everything. And I would just try to do different things with writing. It's like music. You hear the music, you write the words, and you play them over and over in your head. For years, I walked around with what I thought were music in my head, but it was the lyrics I heard in my head over and over and over. And when I started realizing that and started writing them down, the verses of poetry came out like a flood of my mind.
Nice.
When I opened those gates up, they wouldn't stop. And some days, damn it, I want them to stop.
Right.
Even now, I will be doing something with my wife, doing something somewhere, and 2 words will pop in my head. And I can't remember stuff, so I'll tell my wife the 2 words, and she'll email them to me or something on her phone, so that later on, I will write not epic, but poems about these 2 words. And I can't tell you a word right now, example, but they will start me off on a trip of writing poetry. But that's how I started. Just those 2 little things like that.
Good.
And they snowball. When I started writing, it was to woo girls. I'll be honest with you. It was to woo my wife.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
And you know what? I wasn't doing it intentionally. It just what happened. I was writing to say, hey, look at me. I like you. What do you think of this? And the next thing you know, it was wooing. And I started writing little books. I used to buy these little hardcover notebooks.
Oh, yeah.
And handwrite poetry in them for her. And I always thought when I gave them to her, she just got rid of them. She still has every one of them I ever wrote her.
That's sweet.
To me, that just flutters my heart. And that's why we're still married.
That's awesome. So speaking of books, did you have anything out there published that you want to promote or anything, or no?
I do have a book right now that is with a UK publisher, and I don't have the name of the publisher. I'm sorry right now, which is dreadful of me. It has not been released yet. It's just in the process. The book is called Pandemic Moments. I'm going to read you the little blurb if you don't mind.
Sure.
Pandemic Moments. Pandemic moments are the days and times, the melodies of our lives, traversing the moments that we live as we survive through the darkest of nights. Each moment described via a poetic mind, navigating through the darkest of COVID-19, a shock that brought humanity to its knees. Their words and thoughts are woven with music as Bender attempts to cope with the demonstrable reality that seemed to be unfolding before his eyes, before the world's sight. Each moment, a capsule of thought captured on the page, brings the reader on a journey that no one intended to take. No one ever planned to paddle along the dried and empty lakes. An inner quest with humanity's fate at hand. Each day, the events of the disease unfolded on TV like old newsreels he once viewed at Grandma's place. Pandemic Moments contains 124 poems detailing a time and date during the coronavirus pandemic and how one person managed to spend their days.
Well, that's great. And let us know when that comes out. If it does get published, we'll help you promote it. Maybe even have you come back on.
May I read the one poem for it? It's a short one.
Sure.
May 9th, 2021, at 6:31 a.m. after the dawn. I cut a cake, sliced the layers, stacked like years in the event that resembled the morning's past, as I dreamed of rivers lining up to my waist in a cold embrace. I attempted to maintain the dry covering of my soles, but the water moistened my undies and left a coldness that was unwelcomed in the early dawn of shrinkage. My boots, now wet, remaining so for the days to follow, when I climbed back aboard, slicing the paddle through the wake created by my own presence. The still river, a pond in the early moments after the birth of a star, stopping time to witness the awakening before the mist departs towards heaven, moments rising above the flattened fissures and wavering in the afterbirth of a day. I dream, the paddle, the river, as time flows on towards tomorrow. Paul Robert Bender. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyway, I like this poem. I want to, right out the gate, I love the title. It's like the date, the time, and just after the dawn.
Well, actually, Pandemic Moments, I originally wrote the entire book just by the date and time. That was the title of all the poems.
Oh, nice.
And the first publisher didn't like it. And I had to go back and give each of them a title. And I hated it. And I didn't want to do it. But they kept telling me that the reader's going to want to see that title on them. So I went back and started giving them titles. And afterwards, like, okay, it does make some sense.
Okay, so after the dawn is technically like the title that you added, basically.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I liked some of the imagery there, especially that second stanza made me chuckle. The attempting to maintain the dry covering of your soles, but the water moistened my undies and left a coldness that was unwelcomed in the early dawn of shrinkage. That was a great line. I'm sorry.
Okay, you like that, right?
I did, yeah.
Because my wife said, I don't know, but that's a little bit much.
It's probably right on the edge, but it made me chuckle. I thought that was humorous. And we like a little humor here. You got to have some light side stuff going on.
I've been accused of being dark all the time and dismal. When I wrote this book, I wanted to be more upbeat, lighthearted, and pleasant. And humor was, this whole book, music was in the background. You'll find music covered through the whole book.
Well, especially too, you talk about writing it during the time of the pandemic when the whole world's kind of messed up and crazy. It's probably good to find some humor and some lightheartedness in it.
It was a scary time.
Yep.
I don't want to live through that again.
Right. Well, before we move on, is there anything else you want to say about poetry or your poetic journey or anything?
What do I want to say? You know what? This will go nowhere, but I will say it for myself. I want to thank all the people that told me, Paul, you can write. Keep practicing, keep doing it because there's something there. Don't give up. I don't know if they're right or wrong, but I kept trying, and that's all that matters. Because poetry, I think, is something that we give up. But the arts in general, we don't value enough in our society. If we can't commoditize it, we don't want to see it. And I think we have to rethink our strategy.
I agree, and it reminded me of our conversation about not liking poetry in school, that I think it's important to get this kind of poetry out there, to have these outlets, whether it's on Facebook or the written page or these podcasts, that people can hear poetry and know it's just not about the form, the structure, the guys from the 1700s, that poetry is alive and poetry is well and poetry is within all of us. And I think that's important as we express the world and as we make our way through this crazy world.
Well, if you think of Voyager 1 that's going out in space right now, what's on Voyager 1? There's poetry, there's music, and there's pictures. That's humanity.
Yep.
Everything else is crap. That's humanity right there, the arts.
Exactly.
And we have to get back to being in the arts, teaching the arts, and promoting the arts.
I think society often forgets that nowadays.
Yeah, we're all about money now.
Right. Money and self. So as we wrap things up, we want to let our listeners know that we're grateful that you've taken the time to tune in. We hope you're enjoying the poetry shared here, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with others. If you would like to support You're the Poet and what we're doing here, there are a couple of ways to help. You can find links on our website to our Buy Me a Coffee patron site, as well as our You're the Poet store, where you can buy You're the Poet merchandise and share your love of poetry with the world. Thank you for your support as we continue to grow. Please check out our website and various social media outlets to keep up to date with You're the Poet. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and our website, you'rethepoet.com. Until next time, Phil, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Paul, thank you for being our guest.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you guys. Goodbye.